Hey guys, I know it's another week in quarantine, but it's another week we get to have Pulse Online, and I'm excited about the message tonight. It is called, Whose Morality Is It Anyway? And we're going to be talking about right versus wrong, good versus evil, and where does it all come from? But before we get to that, I wanted to let you know at the very end of the message, the video tonight, we have a special time with our youth ministry team. They have something they want to say to you. So stay tuned for that. And don't forget to get your Journey Camp deposits in. It's only $50. I'm willing to work with whatever financial situation you are in. It's only $50. So go ahead and turn that in. We got some spots left, but they're going to be filled up fast. Over a dozen people have already signed up to go to camp. I want you to be a part of that dozen. So let's get you signed up, get those checks into the church office. I can come by and get them if you want me to, if that makes it easier. So with that being said, we're going to turn our attention now to the topic at hand. And as we see in the news, I feel like the past 10 days have been very, very interesting for this shutdown. And I think you guys have been noticing this. There's been a divide in our country, probably in many parts of the world. And on one hand, you have the people that wanted the shutdown to end, right, and get back to work. And then on the other hand, you have people that don't want the shutdown to end because they're afraid of the COVID-19 virus coming back and making its presence known again and causing, wreaking havoc and causing chaos and filling up the hospitals. And both sides sound right. And both sides can sound wrong. And how do we figure that out? You know, everybody has an opinion about what's right and wrong. But how do we know what's right? How do we know what's wrong? How do we know what's good? How do we know what's evil? And before we do that, let's go to Lord in prayer. And we're going to ask for His blessing on this time together. And I want you to pray with me. I know it's a little awkward over video, but a prayer is a prayer, and if you're in agreement with that prayer, God hears that prayer as well. So let's go to Lord in prayer right now. Father, thank you for this time together with these youth that are tuning in right now and listening to this message, Lord. And I ask that you bless their lives, bless their time they're doing their schoolwork, and bless their health and their families who are struggling right now to make it through this shutdown and make it through the pandemic. And we ask, Lord, that you will give us hope, boost our morale in only a way that you can, Lord, and help us to make sense of a world that is struggling with what's right and what's wrong. In Jesus' name, amen. So like I said, we're going to be talking about what's right and what's wrong, and the Bible has a lot to say about that, obviously. Whole books of the Bible are devoted to wisdom, knowing the difference between right and wrong. And I feel like that this is probably the most important thing, one of the most important things that you as a teenager need to figure out during this time that you're learning to be an adult. But what about those systems, guys, that are in place that tell us right from wrong? Are they right? How do we know we have the right standard? How do we know we have the right system? In America, we're taught a very specific morality that really is not taught in very many places in the rest of the world. And there are other countries that teach a certain kind of morality that they don't teach here in America, or it's not as prevalent. See, like I said, there are different kinds of moralities, different systems of morality. There are three specific ones that I'm referring to that I think can be defined anywhere in the world, and you can experience it anywhere in the world. Number one is individual morality. In other words, we ourselves, our individual selves, make up what's right and what's wrong. So what may be right for me may not be right for somebody else, and what may be wrong for me may not be wrong for somebody else, and vice versa. I make up what's right and wrong, and I decide what's right and wrong. And this is the morality that you see in our country right now, in the United States, in North America generally, and in Europe, and especially Western Europe. You see people that are a little bit more individualistic. It's very strong here in America, and I think that you see this on the news with this shutdown stuff. You see people protesting. They're driving their cars to state capitals. They're protesting at the White House. They got the nurses protesting at the White House. You have people doing drive-bys at the state capitals, and they're deciding for themselves, this is right and that is wrong. And we see this come up a lot of times in pop culture, don't we? We see it in phrases like, follow your heart. That's like the mantra of almost every Disney movie. Follow your heart, right? That's an individual morality. What's right and wrong? How do we know we're headed in the right direction? Follow your heart. Or how about this little phrase that you might have heard? You just got to live and let live, right? You just got to let it go, right? Live and let live is basically saying, I live a certain way and you live a certain way. And as long as your way doesn't invade my way and my way doesn't invade your way, we can get along. And you know, with our rugged individualism that happens here in America, where we stand up for ourselves, we express ourselves, we have freedom of speech, we have freedom of religion, we have freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, and we can express ourselves in very highly individualistic ways that you don't see anywhere else in the world. And so it makes sense to us that if I feel like it's right or I feel like it's wrong, then it must be right or it must be wrong. And there's a problem with that. Murder doesn't care about your feelings. Rape doesn't care about your feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. And there are just some things that we know to be wrong. And it doesn't matter how we feel. And so that breaks down pretty quick, don't you see? That you can't have this live and let live mentality. You can't just say, I'm going to follow my heart and think that your heart is always right. In fact, Jeremiah says that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? If we're following our heart, we're following something that is more often than not deceitful and evil. And Jesus said, for from within, out of the hearts of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, thefts, covetousness, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. Our hearts are corrupt. Our individual a sense of self is corrupt. And so we can't really rely on that to understand the difference between right and wrong. And then that's number one. The second system of morality is also prevalent in the world. It may not be as prevalent here in America, but if you look at other countries, you can see it real clearly. And I'm talking about that cultural morality, that group morality. When a certain group says, they come together and they say, we decide what's right and wrong, not just I, but we decide what's right and wrong. And that looks attractive, especially when you're trying to be multicultural. You may say, well, Pastor Nathan, I'm an American and I got certain values, but that doesn't mean somebody who's Chinese or Japanese or Arab or Swedish, that they may not have the same values that I have. And we can see that they live just fine with their own people and we live just fine with ours. And so we can't say that their group morality that they decided on decades or hundreds or thousands of years ago is wrong, and they can't say ours is wrong. Well, there's a problem with that too, especially if you just look back less than 100 years in world history. We can see that there was a group of people that got together and decided as a group what was right and what was wrong, and they destroyed their country. And of course, I'm speaking about the Nazis. The ironic thing about the Nazis is that they're an unholy ally to philosophy. Anytime somebody says something like, we can have a morality apart from God, all you have to do is point to the Nazis and say, see what happens when you have a morality without God? And you don't have to go just to the Nazis. You can go to the Chinese. You can go to the communists. You can go to the Soviet Union and see that a morality without God, it doesn't matter if it's a group or individual, it can be wrong. And we are right for pointing that out and saying that culture is wrong and has wrong values. And as a Christian, I believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He is God come in the flesh. He died on the cross. He rose from the dead. He is the only way to salvation. And the divine revelation, God revealing himself to man, ended with the book of Revelation in the New Testament. That will get me killed in a lot of Muslim countries. And so I can't say that Muslim-controlled Arab countries or Asian countries are right just because, or they're not wrong just because they're a certain culture that's different than mine. I believe that any culture that believes that Jesus Christ is not the Son of God and they teach that to their culture is wrong. And so how do you decide, how do you decide, is the Islamic religion right or am I right, or how do we know what's right? The modern day person, guys, will stop right there and say, we don't know. So it's just better just to leave them alone and they'll leave us alone. We know that's not true. Number one, they don't always leave us alone. And we don't always leave them alone. And number two, by saying that, you're also creating a moral statement. By saying live and let live between cultures or individuals, you're saying that that is the morality in which you live by. And I would ask you, if that's the way you live your life, how do you know that that is right? How do you know? The question of how do you know is one that philosophers and morality experts and ethicists and other religious people and atheists, they all have to answer that question. How do you know that your system of right and wrong is the right one? And see, there's a third system, guys. This third system is one that transcends the individual. That means it goes above the individual, is not beholden to any one person's opinion. It transcends the culture. It doesn't matter if that culture is 50 years old or 5,000 years old. It can transcend their morality as well. It's a system that can be applied to every person at any time frame that they lived in. So there is no change in morality between the 1300s and the 1900s, okay? And it applies universally at all times. And that morality is found in the Bible. And we believe that as Christians, and we say that as Christians because the Bible is the breathed out Word of God. It's not just a bunch of words that are written down by men. It is God revealing His mind and His heart to mankind and saying, this is right and wrong, not based on an arbitrary standard that I just made up. It's right or it's wrong because it's based in my nature. And I define through my nature what's right. And those things that don't follow those things that are right are wrong. And we have to, as Christians, be able to stand on that and say, you know what? That's where I'm going to plant my flag right there. And it's not going to be popular, and it's not going to be cool. And you're going to have high schoolers and middle schoolers mock you and make fun of you because of it. Because we know that some of those things that the Bible teaches are not socially acceptable with some of our friends. We know they're not socially acceptable with some of the adults that we deal with. There may be people that are teachers in your school that would disagree with certain parts of the Bible. But we need to say, hey, you can disagree with it, but you have to explain how you know that you're right and that I'm wrong. It's not just enough to say that, hey, you're wrong about the Bible being right, but you also have to go one step further and say, now show me how you know you're right. And if they don't want to do that, and I've had people say, I don't want to convince you of anything. I don't want to try to persuade you of anything, Nathan. Okay, well, I'm not asking you to persuade me. You're not going to anyway. What I am asking you is tell me what you tell yourself. How do you justify those actions? How do you justify those thoughts? How do you justify those beliefs? How do you know? How do you tell yourself that this is right and this is wrong? And let's see what happens. Because chances are they're not going to have an answer for you. And if they do, you just have to press that one question further. How do you know that that is right? So the Bible leaves us with a decision. And this decision is not a signpost on the road of life. It's not something you drive by and wave at. It's a fork in the road. And it says, you can decide right here. Are you going to follow the world and all of its chaos and all of its worldliness and fleshly desires? Or are you going to buy into my standard, which has a whole bunch of things you may not like right now, but is going to pay off in the end? So the reason why we're discussing how do we know what's right and wrong is not just because it's fun to kind of argue with people, not just because we need to have a standard and now we figured out that it's from God and then we're good. No, it's more than that. It also helps us how to decipher what's going on around us. We have talking heads on CNN and Fox News and everywhere else saying what they think is right, what they think is wrong. But as Christians, we need to have our anchor in something a lot stronger than that. And we need to be pointing forward. And the only way we can point forward and move on with our lives, especially after this shutdown is over with, is by asking ourselves, what is God teaching me right now? What is God teaching me during the shutdown, day by day? And I asked this of the youth ministry team. I asked them to give me the one thing that they feel like God is teaching them, and maybe they have more than one, I don't know. And I want you to listen to their responses.
Hi, so Pastor Nathan asked all of us youth leaders to share what God has been teaching us through this COVID-19 national emergency. And at first, I'll be honest with y'all, it was really hard for me to figure out what God was teaching me and showing me, in part because this is like a huge life-changing event. And because of that, I expect for God to be teaching me some kind of huge life-changing thing. But instead, when I thought about it, what I realized is God is really just teaching me some of the things that He's already been teaching me every day, to wait on Him and His timing, to appreciate my family, and also appreciate even my work that now I don't get to go to every day. He's teaching me that He is always at work, even when it doesn't seem like He is. So those are a lot of the things He's been teaching me. Also, just to be ready to share His love and His word at any time, because you don't know when it might be your last opportunity. As people might be getting sick, or just you don't see them every day, like now is the case. When God puts something on your heart to share with someone, we should do it right away, because we just don't know when that last opportunity is going to be. So those are all things that I feel like in some ways are things God's always showing me and teaching me, but that He definitely has been working on me in the last couple weeks too. I hope you guys have a great day.
Hey guys, I hope all of you are doing well and are finding plenty of positive things to do during this shutdown period. I just want to take a minute and share with you what God has shown me during this time, and that is the importance of meeting together and just being together as a church family. It was very evident to me after our first small group Zoom meeting and those thereafter just how important that was to me. Just the fellowship and laughing together left my heart full and needing more of that. So I guess ultimately, what God has shown me is not to take for granted the blessings that we get each and every day, because that can change overnight. I love you guys and can't wait to see you again.
So, what God's kind of been teaching me and having my heart meditate on is Exodus 14:14, which is the Lord will fight for you and you only have to be silent. While meditating on this, I don't really think that necessarily being silent means not worshiping and things like that, but having your flesh be silent when it's talking about you. Not necessarily your spirit or anything, but your flesh. So like things that come from your flesh, like fear, doubt, anxiety, etc., not good things that don't come from the Lord. But just like silencing those fears and anxieties and doubts with the Lord, which can be done through worship or, reading your Bible, etc., but that's what God's kind of been teaching me, is not allowing my anxiety to kind of and fear get in the way of what He's working out and what He's doing currently. So
I wanted you guys to know that God is teaching everyone through this process. He's really teaching us as adults, and I know He's teaching you as teens, what you should be thankful for and what is important in your life. You're not going to school every day and being with your friends, and I know that's what you want, and so you find out that that is what's really important to you right now. Well, us as adults, we're finding out the opposite, that being at home with family and with our kids and spending this important time with them is what's important. And for us, sometimes day-to-day life gets in the way of that. And I think that God is definitely teaching adults that we don't have forever. And we need to be thankful for our family, and we need to spend time with them as much as possible. I love you guys, and I miss you guys so, so much. I can't wait for us to be together. Bye, guys.
Bye. Hey, guys. So I wanted to share with you something that God's been teaching me during this time of coronation. And God's been using this time to teach me patience. And it's not something I have mastered yet. I am an impatient person. I've been impatient for many years. I'm still impatient. But it is during this time that I am learning to be more patient. And we have some great examples in our Bible of people who had to wait, people who had to be patient. Job comes to mind. He waited through many trials for his chance to present his case to God. And Elijah waited years with none of his own resources, waiting and having his needs met, provided solely by God. And in the New Testament, Paul tells us how important patience is. And he tells us that it is among the fruit of the Spirit. And so I'm going to read this verse with you before I go. 2 Thessalonians 3:5. May the Lord lead your hearts into a full understanding and expression of the love of God and the patient endurance that comes from Christ. Christ is our ultimate example of patience, and it is what we should be striving for. This is a struggle for me, and I am using this time to grow more patient. And I hope you guys are having a good week, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
You know, I tell you something, I think God is doing some amazing things right now in many of our lives. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you in our small groups and when we get back to post-shutdown, which is going to happen very soon. We've got some plans in works. But I'm looking forward to hearing from you what God is teaching you, because I think God is always at work. He's in the business of changing lives. And right now, a lot of lives are being changed. So be thinking about that this week and be praying about it. What is God teaching you during this shutdown? I'll see you next week.